Hey everybody, welcome back to Cities Skylines. It's been a little while since I've done an episode. This is hopefully just a shorter, quick episode to get out before I can get back to making stuff a bit more regularly in the future. I'll get back to that, exactly why that is in a minute. This will be just a couple of small projects I'll be showing off in this video, starting with a quick little bit here showing my creation of this FedEx style. Well, I guess it's not really FedEx style when it explicitly says FedEx on the side of the trucks. But yeah, this is like a FedEx fulfillment center, or whatever FedEx calls their centers and warehouses, full of trucks and packages that they use for receiving and sending out packages and I guess cargo. Really, it's supposed to be more like a cargo, not just like a Amazon packages kind of thing, which I think FedEx does. Maybe I should check that. But that's what this is supposed to be. This kind of completes the trifecta of places that deliver cargo over long distances, with the cargo port I did a couple episodes ago and the cargo rail station I did last episode, and now this is the truck cargo depot. This could be cargo that is delivered within our city state. Things come off the boat, and then because they don't have to go a long distance, instead of going by rail, they'll go by truck to somewhere else in the city itself. They could be to other places inaccessible over a train line, or to receive cargo coming in that can be loaded onto ships going out. I actually should probably put some not FedEx trucks around. While FedEx could be a major delivery partner in the city, it's probably not likely that they own every single truck delivering in the city, so I might add some non-FedEx trucks later in retrospect. Now I see it. But yeah, anyway, I've got the main warehouses I did straight away. This car park around the back, that's for the trucks. Maybe some executives around the back. And around back, I also put some offices. That's like the main admin and office jobs for the center. I put a little park in between them, a little nice space for workers. And now I'm putting another office here on the side. It's like a front office. It could be for execs, for meetings with external people. Could also be an employee lunchroom or break spaces just away from the main warehouse itself. Putting another car park on the side there. As I've said, car parks are great for filling spaces, giving detail, and they can be removed if we find something that can go in that space that's a bit more fitting instead. And add some nice greenery, and I think that detailing ended up looking pretty good, I think. But now we're actually switching over to what's the bulk of this video. I'm going to be upgrading that canal. We're going to make it look more realistic, more detailed, more like what a real canal would look like, at least what I believe it would look like. You'll be seeing me accidentally flooding my rail yard a few times in this video. First step is narrowing the canal. I don't think they will have wanted to excavate more land than is necessary. Canals in real life don't seem to be huge wide highways. They seem to be able to squeeze things in pretty tight, so they aren't wide enough just to go through whenever you want. I'm also going to be separating it into lanes for different directions. I'm using a mod you saw to be able to draw shipping lines manually, though I don't really put too much thought into where they're placed, and that kind of comes back to bite me later, but I'll talk about that when that happens. I'm using these concrete dividers to separate the lanes. They look appropriate, and I'm also changing up the key style. So instead of the one that with the stairs that go down, I'm switching to one that looks a bit more worn and weathered by the ocean. It's got that green stuff down the bottom, which seems more appropriate, especially for like a high traffic industrial area. And just need to make it go back straight where the other one was without flying too much to the city, which I struggle with a little bit. But yeah, while I'm doing that, it has been a while since I've done a video. The reason being that the game was having some issues loading and running. Well, at least my saves were. If you're an extensive Cities Skylines modder, you probably have encountered some of the issues where you have a lot of mods, and especially a lot of assets. You can run into issues where it's taken a long time to load the game, and then having a lot of issues maybe when it does load. The way Cities works is, if you don't know, if Cities has to load all of the mods, or at least all the assets, into your computer memory at startup when you load up the game. So if you have an absolute boatload of assets, it can take not only ages to load up, it will take up all the memory it can. If you have run out of RAM, like I was, because I have a lot of assets, it will start to load them into a temporary file on your hard drive, apparently. That's not great for the load times and the speed of it running. I think it is also bad for the hard drive's lifespan as well. So I was having issues with that. And I was then, is causing, after it's spent like over 20 minutes loading, then we'll have issues where things are breaking and like mods not working at times. I think that's just all caused by all of that kind of stuff. So now I'm back and I've got a full 64 gigabytes of RAM. I've got a large SSD, so I am now recording footage onto an SSD, not a hard drive, which should hopefully make it a lot easier for me to create stuff and record things in cities. Anyway, with this canal, what have I been doing? Not only am I creating the lanes to separate them, putting in gates to be able to block off the entrances and different sections if required. This may not be required, it just kind of seemed like it would. In some canals, there are gates used to create locks, like on the Panama Canal. That's because the ships are traveling over a long distance of land and the ships have to go up and down on different levels, not just straight through. Well, this being a short straight, with both sides just being sea level, of course, they are not required. So it seemed to make sense still that they would have a gate there, but they're not there for sealing off the water to raise and lower it. The gates themselves here, I'm just making out of highway pillars from their assets from some mod or another. This episode is probably the most I've ever used the procedural objects mod, which is what I'm using to make these. The procedural objects mod has a lot of depth if you want to get into it. I really don't know how to use it to its fullest extent. There's a lot you can do with it, but I'm just using it pretty simply, and I'm using it to make these gates, and they can pretty well, I think. The gates sections that go up and down, or would go up and down because they're not animated, are made of gates, and the side bits where they're attached to are also made of gates. Not gates, they're made of pillars, highway pillars that they seem to look appropriate for it. Only one side of the canal is actually getting used by ships in the game because I'm guessing they're just pathfinding to the closest path, so they're only using one side. So that allows me to have one closed and one open, as you can see here. I had some issues with the path that I drew is actually a bit too close to the center than I wanted. I kind of just put it down and I didn't really think about it when I was building it. So now you'll see the ship gets kind of, sometimes will clip the center section sometimes, which is just kind of a pain, but I'm not going to redo the whole thing and widen it all up to make it fit perfectly. So you're just going to have to deal with that, and hopefully it doesn't distract you too much in the cinematics at the end. But yeah, for the rest of this video, I'm mostly just going to be doing decorating. I did struggle a bit with this because I couldn't find too many pictures for examples of this kind of thing to work off of. I kind of need some reference images when I'm working with something like this, because it's not something I would exactly see in my everyday life. I don't really know if there's many examples of this kind of thing anywhere in the world. There are ports in many cities and roads may go over them, but full-on shipping canals cutting through countries was hard to find references for, and them also being close to this city with pedestrian bridges and highways going up top and train lines is even rarer, and it's hard to find much in my Google image searching. So I had to just take some examples of a few different pictures I could find, but still it was a struggle to find out what I could really do to detail this realistically. Most of the time I'm just putting stuff down and I'm hoping it looks good. As I mentioned before, if you're not too sure, if you just keep putting stuff down and adding more detail as much as you can, it tends to make stuff look good after a while. So I'm putting down a walkway across the central concrete area to access the central concrete area, using the procedural objects mod again to create these stairways that could go up and down, and also putting some underneath the highway pillars so they can access that for maintenance or whatever. And I'm adding those booth room security things at the ends of the walkway just to make these will make them look more tower-like. I'm going to be using that a few times in this episode actually. So as I start to flood my city again, I will put some industrial buildings down as well to flank at least one of the sides of the canal for now. Just putting down random buildings in the video just to we'll kind of build that out from there later on. I fence off the canal. Seems to make sense. People can't get too close. There's no real need to. It's not like it's going to be a public park around here. It's just going to be industrial area. And they'll be putting down some more details just on the like center concrete divider itself. Again, that's just a lot of putting stuff down and hoping it works. Just vaguely industrial looking things. I put tanks, some offices, some old looking warehouses that look like they've been there for a while. Some temporary looking things and cranes and stuff. Just things that'll be there for whatever reason. Just slap it down and it should look like it was deliberate in the end. Hopefully the end, when you see the cinematics at the end of the episode, you can see it. I think it turns out pretty well. You'll also see me put down, I've been putting down some lights and some building little booth things along the length of the canal. Some of those things were inspired by this certain picture of one of the canals. I think it's the Panama. I'll have to check that. And I'm trying to replicate a few of the look of a few of those things from that. At least some of the vibes, even if it's not exact from that picture that I'm working off of. Trying to replicate that style, but in a very different city environment. You can't really do it exactly, it's a bit difficult. I do end up pushing back some of the industrial buildings that I just placed away from the edge of the canal just because of that. In a picture they have a bit more space on the sides for I guess safety. That made a bit more sense. And I won't go as far as that because this is a very small country. Space is at a premium. You can't afford to have a lot of empty space. But I did push those back a bit as if, you know, maybe the city wasn't as crowded when the canal was first built, because probably the canal brought in a lot of the business that made the economy strong, which probably would have brought more people and more buildings. So, but that can be, of course, as always, changed up if we fill out the city and we're like, well, realistically, they'd probably use that area. But for now, it's just going to be more of an empty area, just like a space where they put like containers, vehicles, other emergency things, and warehouses and storage areas, just for whatever's required for the shipping canal. And that's what that is. I wanted a watch tower, like a watch / control tower, I guess. That was inspired by this picture that I had, and I didn't have any appropriate assets that I could use for that exactly. So I do end up making something custom here. Again, it's just made out of the freeway pillars assets. I use some iron scaffolding, just meld them into each other, and then I take that security booth building that I've been using a few times this episode, and using the procedural objects mod, I can enlarge that just to, you know, make it the size that makes sense. And I can just copy and paste that, flip it around, and it makes a pretty handy looking tower. I think I'm pretty happy with how that turned out. I'm just going to finish off using these sloped sections of concrete to finish off the ending dividers for the canal. And that'll be that for this episode. Thanks for watching, guys. I've got some plans to be posting and improving more in the future. I've got some ideas to make things a bit more engaging. So hopefully if you've enjoyed any part of this, you'll tune into the next episode, and I'll see you then.